And there's a microphone in back. There's a question here.
Just fairly recently, the United Nations just released a report for 2013 of country rank of happiness, and I think Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and Switzerland, I think, were the top 4. U.S. ranked 17th the happiest. I think Canada and Australia was higher than U.S. So maybe 2 questions. How does your research correlate, or does it correlate with the United Nations happiness report? And then 2, why is the U.S., what's your opinion of why the U.S. was ranked as low? Well, I thought it was low compared to our wealth, Christian nation. So that's the
Sure.
question.
It's a great question. I actually did my doctoral dissertation research comparing Denmark to the United States, because Denmark these lists always shift a little. Sometimes it's Denmark on top, sometimes Sweden, sometimes Holland. Every once in a while you see some outlier like Costa Rica. So you can't, take them as 100% gospel, but, they're basically Denmark's a pretty tidy society. I don't know if you've ever been. So I was interested because I've been to Denmark many, many times, and I thought, wow, this place is really well run. It's a social welfare state. It seems to provide for its citizenry pretty well, and yet I wouldn't really want to live here. They don't have any kind of pizzazz. There's no carnival. It's like the opposite of Rio. Rio is kind of like this messy society where everyone seems upbeat, and Copenhagen seems like a button-down society where everyone is just satisfied. So when you unpack it a little bit to find out, why is it that the U.S. wouldn't be faring as well, because we are richer than Denmark is by a long shot, you find out that the rich people, the richer people in America and the richer people in Denmark roughly look the same. It's when you go down to the other end of the spectrum that you find the differences. And when you just look at the broad average, it's hidden. But when you unpack it, the poor in the United States experience fairly elevated amounts of negative emotion, anger, anxiety, and so forth. But the poor in Denmark do not. There's also a lot more income equality in Denmark than there is here. But we seem to be providing well for a lot of people, but perhaps not emotionally for those at the bottom, and that's what those are picking up. We're still number 17, you said. We're not number 193. But for the amount of money and for how well run and kind of how incredible our society is, you would kind of want it to be a little bit higher. Someone else? There's someone here. You're getting the microphone.
Excuse me? You have some? Oh. I wonder if you'd comment, do you not find, or do you find that temperament is inborn, number one? And secondly, I'll just, then how does age play a relationship, play into this? Age as far as happiness.
Sure. I'll answer the second question first, because in some ways it's easier to answer. So we have lots of longitudinal data, and we have data with people at all different stages of life. I'm sure you know that there is a stereotype that older people are less happy, right? They're kind of curmudgeonly or something like this. That is not what the data show. The data show that as you get older, the intensity of your emotions kind of dampens. You kind of have a dampened emotional experience. So you're not like, I don't know if you've ever hung out with, I have a 15-year-old and a 19-year-old, but they're like puppies straining at a leash. Everything's just amazing, and they like want to just run around and they think everything's awesome all the time, and it's just exhausting. So as you get older, that kind of gets dampened down. It's not that you're not experiencing positive emotion, you're just not experiencing intense euphoria, but what is going way up is life satisfaction, a sense that sort of everything's okay. Like, can we just not be hassled with every little thing? Like, it's sort of okay, everyone. So that's the real trend. You find dampening of emotional experience, but still quite high, and older people do better, significantly better at life satisfaction. So hopefully. What's that? Temperament definitely has a genetic component. We can tell if we take monozygotic twins or dizygotic twins who are raised together, raised apart. So we do know that, yes, there is a genetic element, of course, to your personality and along with it to your emotional temperament. We can even study this in kids. It's not the whole picture, though. You know, your environment actually influences your genes. You know, the study of epigenetics, that a lot of your genetic leanings are sort of like potentials that might be unlocked or not, depending on what your environmental circumstances are. So it's a little bit of a complex question, but yeah, there's a genetic element to the way you feel, but I would not want anyone to feel like it's a cage in which they're trapped, necessarily. Maybe a couple more. There's one here.
It seems like one of the most relevant applications of your topic would be related to inheritance. We've all accumulated a level of security that allows us to consider what we're going to leave to those that remain when we're gone. How does happiness relate to, or I should say, how constructive is that inheritance to the people who are getting the money from us, who are receiving the wealth, the balance of what we haven't spent at the time that we pass? Obviously, it's to some extent related to the individuals that are receiving the money and the ethics that they've, work ethic and accomplishments in their lives. But is there any general consensus as to a philosophy for giving to your children, your grandchildren, etc.?
I'm going to give you an answer that will not surprise you at all, which is I'm even almost reluctant to say this because I don't want to tell you this because it's something you already know. But I think the greatest thing we can give to our kids is values, ethics, values, morality. That's sort of what we equip them with. And I think to the extent that you don't just hand them a lump sum of cash as bequeathed in your last will and testament, but rather, and here are some suggestions about how to use this. I mean, it's just a tool. I mean, if you are a gun owner, you don't just have a gun. You actually think that there are certain ways you should and certain ways you should not use a gun. Money is as much the same thing. It's not inherently good or evil, but I think having good conversations with people about what you should do, that's the thing I thank my grandfather for the most. It was very clear, it's okay to take a trip to Hawaii. You don't need to feel guilty about that. But if all you do is take trips to Hawaii, then you're probably missing an opportunity to make the world a better place, which is important to do. And so I had some strings attached, no legal strings attached, but that, I think, is what was so great. Does that feel at all satisfying to you? I don't know.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's that choice between setting up a trust fund and just divvying it up among the survivors. And basically, in one respect, there's a level of control that may be offensive. And in the other respect, you know, some of your kids are just not responsible enough to receive that money and use it wisely. So
Yeah.
there's a judgment call there as well.
I
I make a joke about trying to spend the last nickel just before I die.
Sure, sure. I think a
So
lot of
the kids
people can probably relate to
The
that.
kids continue to love each other and remember us fondly.
Yeah, exactly. I'll just tell you, kind of confidentially, that's what my parents say. They say, we're leaving you nothing. But we're going to take you on vacation every year until we die. We're going to spend time together. Wouldn't you rather have memories with us than our money? But yeah, I mean, I can't advise. That's what Foster and Motley is for. They probably have something to say about that. I don't know. Yeah. Okay, one and then two. Yes.
You demonstrated the value or the perception of happiness from giving money away. Can you comment on the connection of that happiness with people such as Warren Buffett, Oprah Winfrey, Bill Gates, all signing up to commit their fortunes after their death versus living to see what that fortune provides to the world?
I think they've already reaped the benefit. It's in the knowing that they're giving. In fact, we did some follow-up studies related to that, looking at, are you spending money on someone you know versus donating to someone you don't know? And we found it beneficial in both cases. It's just the knowledge that in some way this has the potential to help others. It doesn't actually even have to help others, right? I mean, because Warren Buffett will never know if his money is squandered or just dissipates into a collapsed economy or what. I mean, he won't know. But the idea that the potential is there, I think, is where he reaps the psychological reward.
I do a fair amount of fundraising for nonprofits. I could certainly use your slide on Principle 2. But my question is, have you done any work on why are some people just philanthropic and other people are not philanthropic, and people of, I'll say, the same means?
It's a great question, and I'm poor for not having an answer for you. I'm sorry, it's dissatisfying to me. I wish I could tell you. It would save you time, right? You could just avoid, some of them. But it really is, I think it's a really important question, because what if it's a teachable skill or, a teachable attitude? I mean, wouldn't the world kind of be nicer if everyone was willing to pitch in a little more? I could look into it for you. I could look at the research, and I'm certainly happy to give you my slide. Email me, and I'll see what I can do for you.
I'll wait for your
Okay. There was someone over here. Yeah.
I was just wondering, in the inheritance topic, like we plan to give our children a third, like 5 years apart.
They have 5 kids.
No. We have a third of what they would get when we pass away, another third of that amount 5 years from then, and another 5,
Okay.
the remaining money like 10 years after we die. Is that setting them up for the same, dissatisfaction with, because they know it's coming to them?
Yeah,
or?
I mean, it's actually interesting. Now, I mean, I'm gonna kind of call a timeout in my answer. Obviously, I don't know what the tax consequences of that are. Anything, kind of from the financial advising point of view. So I'm not doing that.
I'm talking about emotional.
Yeah, it's interesting because one thing it does is sets them up for anticipation, which could potentially be nice. They might feel frustrated with you, but I think that's, I mean, it's intriguing to me that you would do that. I haven't thought a lot about it, but I certainly could see them. It's sort of like knowing that you're going to get a windfall, right? Like, wouldn't that be kind of interesting in life? Like, oh yeah, we can count on that windfall 5 years from now. That'll be interesting.
Well, when we initially set it up, they were so young, we didn't want them to be totally irresponsible and blow it all.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of the thinking, that they
Yeah.
would gain maturity over
Sure.
the years.
My sister has her money in trust in perpetuity because she'll never be mature enough for it.
I have a question. This is not a planted question. I just don't know the answer. What is Positive Acorn, and what's the deal with the name of that? Positive Acorn?
It's just exactly what you would think. If you plant an acorn, it grows into an oak tree, and what if that acorn was positive? You'd get a better oak tree. It's a bit of a non sequitur. We just thought it was a little playful and kind of intriguing. It was either that or Foster and Motley. One last question, and then I think we'll wrap up. Yeah. Oh. You mean geopolitical states? Yeah, no, it's not really. I mean, you do find some slight differences, but it's not really that important. Yeah. Ohio's the happiest? I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, it's not really like that so much. Yes.
I remember once I read an article on the same subject. Basically, the conclusion was what you said, that it relates to emotional experience, whether or not money at the end of the day may buy happiness. But that is above some threshold. You haven't mentioned this. Mm-hmm. What's your opinion about this? So there is an underlying belief that you need some level to satisfy your basic needs, and after that, there is an emotional experience.
Sure. So this is what economists call diminishing marginal utility. That is a curvilinear relationship where money buys a lot of happiness for people. You imagine you make $5,000 a year and suddenly you get another $5,000, you're making $10,000. It's going to make quite a difference. But if you make $80,000 and get $5,000, that same amount of money is going to buy you relatively less happiness. So Danny Kahneman, a psychologist who won the Nobel Prize in economics, certainly has published on this recently. And he shows that flattening area is about $75,000 a year in individual income. So I kind of interpret that two ways. First, yeah, that like kind of know when is enough, like that you, in terms of your creature comforts, you might not need to make that much more than $75,000 if you just want happiness. Now, you might want extra money to provide happiness for others, right? And having some extra 75,000s around might help in that. The other way to interpret it, however, is that I think the average U.S. Household income is something like $38,000, which means that most people could actually do with a little bit more money, and that will still pay off in happiness. Not professionals that are making 150, 200,000 necessarily, but certainly, the vast majority of everyday folks. Yeah. Thank you so much. Feel free to email me at any time.